read 10 books in November, which is more than any other reading month I think I've ever had in my life. So this wrap up is going to be honestly so much fun. Because I read 10 books, I did not end up grabbing all of them to like show you them as I talk about them. I guess since we have 10 books to go through, I better get a move on. Starting at the beginning of November, I'm gonna go through every single book that I read. I'm gonna give you the rating. I'm gonna give you a brief description of the book and kind of my like thoughts and feelings on it for all 10 books that I read in November. So starting off strong, the first book I finished in November was Heat of the Everflame. This is the third book in the Kindred Curse saga, which is kind of a romantasy. Well, I don't even want to use the word romantasy because it's not heavy on the romance. It is way more of a like fantasy type of series. But this series follows our main character, DM, is living in this world where there are mortals and there are descended. And basically the difference between the two groups are the mortals are like normal humans, and then the descended are these like immortal beings with powers, kind of similar to Fae. And there is this separation between the mortals and the descended in this world where the mortals are treated like pretty poorly by the descended, and DM grows up in this mortal city in her world, and then basically a whole bunch of crazy turns of events happen. She ends up in this like rebel group. She's kind of trying to fight the difference between like the social classes that the descended have kind of created. They've really oppressed the mortals and treated them very, very unfairly. And so she is kind of after like equality. She's wanting to change the world with this new idea of mortals and descended being on the same level and them being able to help each other and live in harmony. I'm not going to go too deep into like the actual plot of any of it, but it is a really fun time, I would say, for fans of ACOTAR, Fourth Wing, any of those like popular romantasy books, but it's not quite as heavy on the romance in the first, especially like the first one is very much like a setup of what the next two books are going to provide. And the first one's so good. It's fast paced. It's like a lot of fun. There's just a lot of setup in the first one for what you're going to get later. And it's not very heavy on the romance. The second and third ones though do get heavier on the romance, but also heavier on the world building and the fantasy politics, which are so much fun. I would say the politics in this series it's like one of the best of the fantasy politics in like the newer like romantasy type genre that I've read. It's really, really fun to follow. It's very interesting. And the world building is also really cool. Like their world and magic system is really, really cool and unique. Couple of like content warnings for this one, just at your discretion based on your convictions. There is some language. There is spice later in the series. I believe there's like one spice scene in the first one, and then as you get into the second and third, it does get a little bit heavier. It's not the point of the story. It is definitely skippable, but just know that it is there. And then same with like language is kind of a similar situation. It is definitely for adults. It is an adult fantasy, and so there is some adult language and just other themes as well. There is like talk of these like higher power type of beings that kind of created like the descended in a sense. If any of that goes against like what you would typically choose to read, then this series is probably not going to be for you. The next book I picked up in November is The Women by Kristen Hanna. I have a whole reading vlog on this, so I'm not going to go too in depth about it, but it's been about a month since I finished this book, and I still think about it almost every single day. I was heavily impacted by this book. It really, really spoke to me in a lot of different ways and helped change and shape my perspective. I think it gave me so much empathy for a group of people that I did not really understand or have any kind of like interest in the past. It is a historical fiction that follows a nurse in the Vietnam War. She is a combat nurse, so she goes into Vietnam and she is tasked with basically cleaning up the mess of the war, being the soldiers that are coming in to the soldiers that make it to the hospital, providing care for them and trying to either save their lives or make them as comfortable as possible while they pass. So there is just so much in this book. The big theme of this is the women in the Vietnam War and kind of shining a light on that group of people that doesn't honestly get talked about very much. Even Vietnam War veterans in general, I feel like don't get as much credit or get discussed as much because of the nature of the war. I feel like the veterans can kind of get pushed aside or ignored. We don't like hold them as high of a regard as like World War I and II soldiers and veterans. This was a very emotional read. It was very impactful. There was some really tough stuff in this, so definitely triggers all over the place in terms of like violence and gore and grief and death. There's like self-harm and like self-hate and things like that as well, just because you're following these characters that are going through war, and they're not just living in a country at war, they are like boots on the ground in the war. And so there's just a whole lot that comes along with that. Obviously there is language, they are soldiers, so there's a lot of that. I do feel like there was one spice scene, but a lot of her like spice scenes don't feel like spice scenes. I don't know if that really makes sense, but because it's just so much more about the character and their emotions and their trauma and the things that they're dealing with than actually like the physical act that they're doing. Use your discretion if you're going to pick up this book, because it is a very difficult read and very emotionally draining, honestly. So make sure that you're in a good place and that you've kind of done a little bit of research and decided and prayed over it, if you do that, about like whether or not it's right for you to pick it up in what moment. Next, I have Hercule Poirot's Christmas, which this is an Agatha Christie novel, and I did a reading blog that you guys haven't seen yet, but you will, of this one and two others that are like Christmassy. So I'll just kind of give you like a really brief outline of this. So Hercule Poirot's Christmas by Agatha Christie is a fun, cozy mystery family drama type of book. Basically, the premise of this is this whole family comes together for Christmas for the first time in many, many years. The siblings are grown and they don't necessarily all get along, but they all come together because the main like head of the household is getting old and he is like, we need to all spend Christmas together as a family. So they're all together in this house. Some of them get along, some of them don't. There's definitely a lot of drama between all of the family members, and the head of the household on like very early, I feel like it's like the first night they're all there, he is offed. And nobody knows who did it. Nobody knows why. It is a fun, like Clue type cozy mystery. I say cozy because I think it just gives cozy vibes, but like someone is offed. So like, it's not like, it is high stakes, I guess, but it does feel like a more of a cozy mystery, but it's very much like a whodunit Clue type of vibe. It was fun. It got a little slow paced at times, but I did have a lot of fun with it, and I would recommend it if you want like a classic type mystery book around Christmas time. And I did give this one 3.75 stars. Next up, I read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, and I actually really, really loved this book. I ended up giving it 5 stars, which I was really surprised about because I'm typically a little more picky about my books. I read this for my in-person book club, and there were elements after we'd all talked about it that I was like, yeah, like one of the girls in book club like called out like a couple of plot holes that she had picked up on and things that like just didn't necessarily add up. I'm like, yeah, I see that and I hear you, but my experience was so good reading this. Like I just absolutely flew through it. It was so fast paced. It was so interesting. The storyline just really had me like gripped to the point where like I wasn't even thinking about the logistics, and that's pretty rare for me because I usually am one that picks up on stuff, and like plot holes and stuff like really tend to bother me. So that is very impressive that like he was able to make it so thrilling and gripping that like it did not even bother me, that like there were some things that were like, does that really add up? But this one was really fun. We're also watching the show now, and I'm really liking the show. The screenplay was written by the author, so it feels like it expands on a lot of the things that you have questions about if you just read the book. So I'm really appreciating that element of watching the show, because I feel like it's really like fleshing it out even more. And I really like knowing what I know from the book, because I'm able to kind of like look for things in the show and pick up on things in the show that I don't think I would pick up on if I hadn't read the book. So I definitely would recommend Dark Matter, and I would recommend reading it and then going and watching the show. The next one I have is another Christmas book, and this one will be in that reading vlog coming later. So again, I'm not going to go too far into it, but this is The Holiday Cottage by Sarah Morgan. This was a really fun and sweet literary fiction that follows a couple of different points of view, but it's really about our main character, who is just, all she wants is to have a sweet and loving family to spend the holidays with, and the only family member that she actually has is a mother that's estranged. And so she pours herself into work. She like burns herself out just working her tail off, and she kind of drops the ball on some things because of like her mom drama, and her boss says, hey, you're going to need to take a month off for Christmas. I know you only wanted to take a week. You're actually going to take the whole month. And so she ends up going to this cottage. It's in this small town that like one of her clients owns. And there is just so much that happens in this book. It feels like so much like the drama. Like I'm not going to talk really any more about the plot because I think it's really fun kind of going into it blind. It does kind of give like Christmas hallmark, but I feel like it had like some good drama and some good things to like keep you eating it up. Like, and I really did eat it up. I read it so fast. It was so much fun and just like a great fun time. I gave it 4.25 stars. I think the only thing that really knocked it down a little bit for me was that there were some things that were just completely unrealistic, where I was like, okay, you've now pulled me out of the story because I'm thinking about the logistics of this being the case, and like there's just no way. And then like some of it, it's just like a little cheesy because it is just a Hallmark Christmas book basically. But it was a lot of fun, and if you like that kind of stuff, I would definitely recommend it. There was a romance subplot. There's a fade to black scene, and there's some like things hinted at, but there's no open door spice, and it's relatively clean in terms of like the language and stuff like that as well. It's really just sweet, wholesome, heartwarming. I really enjoyed that. Next up, I read The Bright Years by Sarah Damoff. I don't know. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4.5 stars. I think it was just another emotional roller coaster. I honestly wish I hadn't read it when I did. And the reason for that being, I was still in the place of being so overwhelmed by the women, and that book impacting me so much that I think The Bright Years like didn't hit as much as it could have. I think The Bright Years like didn't get its chance to shine because it was outshined by the women. However, I will say I still gave it 4.5 stars. I still really enjoyed it. It is a like family drama. The male main character grew up being like abused by his father, and female main character just meets him and thinks he's the most like sweet and genuine person that she's ever met. There is a lot of like crazy like drama, I guess, like family drama in this. There's multiple generations portrayed, and it kind of covers like the generational curse of addiction and of like having to fight your instincts when generations before you have struggled with addiction, having to fight that like natural tendency to fall into the same trap that the generations before you have. It's a really deep book, and even though it's really short, there is a lot in it that I think is just really important to talk about, and I think it's very eye-opening in a lot of ways. I would recommend this for, again, a more mature audience. There's like no spice at all, there's none of that, but it's a very difficult read because there are just some really dark themes. It definitely makes you think a lot more deeply about different people's really difficult situations. And it does like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's really, really well done the way the story is written. I would highly, highly, highly recommend this one. I think it gives some really important perspective on some things that like we don't always talk about. We got 4 more to go here. Let's get into the next book that I read in November, which was Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. I gave this book 2.5 stars, which is so upsetting to me. I really loved Fable last year, and I was really excited about Catabasis. It just seemed like it was going to be such an interesting plot and like a really fun, like a fantasy little romp, if you will. And it was not. The pacing was terribly inconsistent. The writing was way too lush for what the story was. There was like so much unnecessary description. The moment I started getting the ick in the beginning was the main character talks a lot about being a rock climber, and there's a scene in the first like quarter of the book where like she is having to use her climbing skills. And as someone who has been a rock climber for the last 12 years of my life and used to work in the climbing industry and grew up on like a climbing team, I was so unbelievably cringed out by the way that climbing was described. And like I think I physically cringed and got like the worst ick from the way that it was being described. And that's like just a small part, but I just was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. It wasn't necessarily inaccurate. Like it didn't feel like, oh, someone who doesn't know about climbing is trying to talk about climbing. It felt like she had like recently, like the author maybe recently got into climbing and was like really excited about all of her knowledge about it and just really felt like putting it in the book. And I just felt so cringed out by that element of it. And I think that like pretty much expresses my feelings about the whole rest of the book. The main character is this student in this like magical school, and I think it's Oxford. It's like a magical version of Oxford. And she accidentally offs her professor, and is like an accident in whatever it was that they were doing. And she's like, I need to go get him back because I have to get through this part of school. Otherwise, my career is like done. I'm not going to be able to go as far as I need to be able to go. And so her and one of her classmates, they build a portal and they go to hell to try to get her professor and bring him back. Already off the bat, like just as a Christian, there's a couple of things to like be discerning here if you're going to pick this up. First of all, I wouldn't recommend picking it up. Period. If you're thinking about it, just some things to know about the content and like things like that. So the main characters are essentially like magicians, witches, whatever. Like it does feel a little like witchcraft, and the things that they like do are they're making these different like symbols and whatever with chalk, and it does feel a little like witchy in that sense. Be advised and use discretion and discernment there. Yes, they are going to hell. I will say the way that they portray hell is a lot more of like a fantasy land. They kind of take all of the different things that you know about hell from fictional works over the centuries. So like Dante's Inferno, and like there's a couple of other ones that they use to like inform their creation of like what they think hell is. So like use prayer and discretion there as well if this is something you're thinking about picking up. And then there is language, and there, I feel like, may have been a little bit of spice. It was so cringy though. It was, she was trying to make this like romantasy. The relationship was so cringy and like icky to me. I just did not like the two of them together at all. They had no chemistry in my opinion, and their relationship was just, I did not like it. I did not like their relationship at all. And then the pacing was also not good. There was just so many parts of it that was like, okay, wait, we're doing this so fast, and then we're all of a sudden slowing down and spending so much time on this element that like literally doesn't matter at all. The writing was, like I said, it was overwritten. It was way too much. And then the plot, it did not work. Like there were just so many things about this that I can't. I'm getting like upset talking about it because I can't believe that I read 560 pages of this book. To be fair, I did listen to a lot of it, and I got to a point where I was like, I want to DNF this, but I'm so far at this point that I just need to finish it and formulate my opinion and be done with it. The way that the characters like had to move through hell to try to get to the professor was very strange and inconsistent, and did not feel like it actually made sense to like what they were trying to achieve. And it almost felt like they created this like rule about it, and they were like, we have to do it this way because that's the rule of hell. And then they like broke the rule, and they went and like found a very convenient way around doing it that way, which was like, what? Honestly, 2.5 stars is a little generous. I only gave it that much because there were some moments that were fun and that I thought were like kind of funny. Like some of the characters were kind of witty, and so that was like kind of fun. But other than that, like that's really it. Honestly, half a star for the cover and the sprayed edges, because that, I kid you not, is probably the prettiest book that I like have seen in a long time. Unfortunately, it's such a pretty package, but not a good read, sadly. So that is kind of basis. Next up, I read The Woman in Cabin 10. I've not watched the movie for this yet, but I heard that it was like pretty good. I gave this one 3 stars, and honestly, it probably deserves more like a 3.5. It was really fun. It was really fast paced. I really enjoyed, like, it was another whodunit kind of mystery. They're on like a cruise ship of some kind, and it's another like Clue type of vibe where like something happens, everyone's confused. They're like, we're all on this boat, so I guess we got to figure it out. And they like have to try to solve the mystery. It was very thrilling, I will say, like very much like a mystery thriller. And I read it in the middle of a readathon, and it kept me up, which is great. I was reading it at like 4 a.m, so it did its job. It was a really fun read, and I would recommend it as a mystery thriller. Content wise, it's a thriller, so like definitely some like darker things, definitely some like torture-y type of vibes in it, so it is a little bit like dark in that sense. There's not really much else in terms of content. I will say I do actually recall there being a relationship in this with, I want to say it was a closed door spice scene. If it wasn't closed door, it was brief and skippable, so just bear that in mind as well. Next, I have The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. This was another holiday book. Actually, the last 2 are holiday books. This was another whodunit. I was really on my like mystery game this month, but it was a very fun, like, we are just solving this mystery and it's Christmas time, and honestly felt a lot like the Agatha Christie one. I kind of was getting like the two of them confused in terms of like what the plot actually was. But it's fun because it's like a rom-com, but also like a cozy mystery, and it is a closed door rom-com as well. There's like fade to black, and there's like a little mention of like some stuff, and some stuff is like implied, but it is a fade to black. So much fun, so funny. The main characters had me just like cracking up. I really liked the male main character's sense of humor in this, and just like their whole vibe and dynamic of like trying to solve this crime together. It was really cute and fun. I don't honestly have like a ton more to say because there wasn't much to it. Like, it was pretty short, fast paced. I read it during a readathon, and that was like the perfect time to read it. But I would highly recommend that one for your Christmas TBRs because I had a lot of fun with it. I gave it 4 stars, and it was great. I really, really enjoyed it. Finally, I have the holiday swap. This will be in that same reading vlog with the other 2 that I mentioned. I gave this one 3 stars. It was a fun, like, rom-com kind of book. The main characters are twins. We have 2 different points of view, and one of them lives in the small town that they grew up in, and she like runs a bakery, and then the other one lives in LA and she hosts a baking like reality TV show. What was really fun, and I would highly recommend doing this if you're gonna pick this up, is I read it and turned on like the Great British Baking Show, like the Christmas edition, while I was reading it, and that was such a vibe. It definitely makes you want baked goods, but in like the best way possible. It was just a fun, like another Hallmarky kind of thing. I think I said this already, but I did give it 3 stars. If you just think of it as like a Hallmark Channel movie, you'll be okay with the fact that, like, of course it's not realistic. Like, we're not here for it to be realistic. We're just here for the vibes. So I enjoyed it though. I had a fun time. It was fast paced. It was entertaining. It was no spice. There was a lot of tension. It was very like, oh my gosh, like I'm so excited for the 2 of them. But like I said, like, no spice, no talk of it. Like, it was really well done in that way. So I definitely really, really enjoyed that. I said this in my review in the vlog, but I'm gonna say it again because you haven't seen that one yet. Couple of like content things, very mild language, and then there is mention of astrology. So if you like completely stay away from anything to do with astrology, they do mention it. It's something that like the twin sisters kind of like, it connects them in a way, but not in like a woo-woo way. It's just like kind of mentioned. So it's not like a big part of the story by any means, but if you like hold personal convictions to like stay completely away from anything that even talks about it, there is mention of astrology. Okay, I am really tired of talking at this point. Those are all of the books that I read in November. I hope that you guys have gotten some recommendations from this. Let me know if you've read any of these books, or if you have, what you thought of them. If you haven't, are there any of these that are on your TBR? And let me know your thoughts if you guys have read any of these. Also, I really want to know if anyone else has read Catabasis and disliked it as much as I did, because it can't just be me. Like, I think it was actually objectively bad, but I need to know if anybody else read it and like also thought it was bad. I'm wrapping this here, and I will see you guys tomorrow for another day of Bookmas. I am so excited for our 12 days every day. In case you don't know, I am posting December 1st through 12th at noon, so stay tuned for more videos coming your way, and I will see you then. Bye!